Um, I wanted to read this loud. Be thankful for what you have. You will end up having more. If you concentrate on what you don't have, you will never ever have enough. Um, and then another good quote for showing gratitude is one of the simplest yet most powerful things human can do for each other. So do practice attitude of gratitude, and you will see you will feel so contented. And we'll talk more, but always remember, um, if you're thankful for what you have, you will always get more. With that, Dr. Nina, let's take it away.
Gone over a lot of different kind of questions around what is stress, what are some of the belief systems associated with our stress. And I remember that was a very interactive session. A lot of you participated and shared your thoughts about what stress is and what your understanding about stress is. So, I'm going to talk today and tomorrow. Hopefully, we'll be able to cover some of this material in the next couple days um, about what are some of the stress management strategies that I have learned and I have found to be effective for my own self and in my work with other patients. So, we are talking about one particular aspect of stress management today, and that's known as mindfulness. And I'll certainly get into that more as we, move forward in this presentation. Let me just make sure I get that in a presentation mode. Yeah. Okay. So, we went over some of these things in the last week's presentation. What stresses you out? There's lots of things listed here. Any quick kind of things you recognize that apply to you? I can tell you about my own self. What stresses me out is deadlines, certainly project deadlines or getting somewhere on a particular time. Those things do stress me out. And then among some of the other things here, I would say the thing that also stresses me out in addition to meeting deadlines is also um, appointments. Like again, I think it ties in with I have to get somewhere or have to meet get to an appointment on time. And the other one is also working with your employer. Often that can be a big source of stress, and I think all of us might be recognizing that. Now I would like you guys to quickly type in the chat box what factors amongst this slide listed here you think stress you out. And Poonam, if people are typing, could you quickly read out?
Sure, Dr. Nina. I don't see anything.
Any responses? Okay. Well, I think I won't spend too much time. I think a lot of us recognize a lot of these factors here. So, I was trying to find a best way to understand stress. And when I heard about this equation or formula, um, that kind of resonated the most with me and it made most sense. So one way to understand what stress is this equation or this formula. Stress is equal to pressure divided by resilience. And to help you understand this, let me give an example. If I had two groups amongst the listeners today, and I said, okay, we have 5 people in one group, maybe five, I don't know how many, but I'm just randomly giving a number. And I gave a copper sheet and a hammer to one group, and I gave an iron sheet and a hammer to another group. And I asked you to hit the respective metal sheets that you've been given with the hammer. Which one do you think is likely to crack or break first, the copper sheet or the iron sheet? Any responses? How many of you think the copper is the one that's going to break first? Okay, I'm seeing two different responses. One said copper, another person said iron. Any more responses? Who agrees with it's copper? Sue is also saying copper. Okay. Well, yeah, the correct answer is copper. And the reason for that is that the resistance factor or the resilience factor of copper is much lower than that for iron. So because of its higher resistance or resilience, iron needs, you might need to hammer it twice or thrice or 4 times before you can crack it up. And one hit of the hammer can easily crack up the copper sheet. So the kind of, since all of us are from science backgrounds, I felt like this formula really resonated well with my understanding. What, okay, so how do I put this in the perspective of stress? So, with our modern lives and, advancement in technology and all the progress we've made as a mankind, we've certainly done a marvelous job adding to pressures in our lives. And that's actually, in the form of demands at work, demands at home, taking care of our loved ones, expectations from self, expectation from others, social media. I mean, these are just a few factors, but we are dealing with a lot of pressures or demands, and certainly often to meet those demands, to meet those pressures, we have to compromise on our resilience. And I'll come to what resilience is and how that ties in with this. But, before we get to that, let me explain what resilience is based on American Psychological Association's definition. Resilience is a process of adapting well in face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress such as family and relationship problems, serious health problems, or school or workplace and financial stressors. So, I mean, it's a long definition, and they've put in a lot of different factors that are looked into what can cause stress. But essentially, in a simple way, resilience is nothing but our ability to adapt to adversity, and that adversity could come from different sources. So, what do we know about what's research telling us? What are the factors that increase resilience? So these are some factors that have been identified based on research studies, that having good quality and quantity of sleep is really critical to get our resilience going. Regular physical exercise, free fun time with friends and family, relaxation exercises, practicing gratitude, practicing compassion, and then there is a lot of research on mindfulness and mindful meditation practice. So if some of you have been attending our series, we've talked about a few resilience factors already. We've talked about sleep management. That was our most recent topic. Certainly, we all know about importance of physical exercise, and a lot of us tend to be very mindful of that, and we try to get that. This is another one that I think we all know, but because of the demands and pressures we have, we often compromise on that. And this forced quarantine is now making us have more free, fun time with our friends and family. I guess not so much with friends, but family for sure. We've covered a lot of different types of relaxation exercises also in the series when we were talking about thought management, to certain degree in anger management, and then in sleep management. So progressive muscle relaxation, guided imagery were some of the examples we talked about. Of course, other kinds of meditation practices could come under this. So this is essentially exercise, where we are focusing both on body and mind. And then these last three factors are somewhat interesting. Practicing gratitude, and I think Poonam has been doing a wonderful job reminding us of this every time we meet. She has been collecting wonderful quotes and different reminders for us to be grateful for what we have, including today's thought she shared. So that's something I think that in fact has been showed again in research, that people who do that are the ones who have higher resilience. People who practice kindness and compassion also are the people who tend to have more resilience. And then this whole shift in our lifestyle that's been looked into recently is that being mindful, being in the present moment, is what also improves our resilience and ability to tolerate the stress. So going back to our formula that we were looking at, stress is equal to pressure divided by resilience. We just need to focus on doing two different things. We need to decrease the numerator, that is decrease the pressure, and increase the resilience. Once we do that, we are going to be having that normal level of stress, which is healthy for us. So interestingly, studies have shown that we need to have little bit of stress to be able to stay motivated and be successful, or whatever, be motivated to do further, move forward in life. But it's definitely important to have just that much level of stress, and higher level of stress. When you get to the point of getting stressed out, you need to look back at this formula and realize, oh, maybe my pressure is too much, or my resilience is going down. That's why I'm feeling stressed out. So we definitely talked about the different sources of pressure. I'm not going to spend time on that. Poonam also went over that last week. Our focus will be on resilience and coping skills, or ways we can improve our resilience. And we looked at some of the factors. And amongst those factors, the one that I'm going to talk today about is mindfulness. So what is mindfulness? How many of you have heard this term and know what that means? Any thoughts about that? Are many people?
Yeah, I heard that mindfulness. One of the thing about mindfulness I read is that it is not try to get rid of the unhappy or unhelpful feelings that we have, but to be aware of it and to live with it, to make it as not the enemy. It's one thing that I read. I'm not fully understand that because it's not easy to live or to befriend it, so called. Because we tend to uh, unhappy thoughts or uh, emotions.
Right. So Cliff, I think let me maybe try to interpret what you read in my understanding. So, there are different ways to understand what mindfulness is, and some people may have slightly different definition. The one I liked the most is listed here, where you're bringing your attention, and I saw somebody did type up awareness. So yeah, that could be another word. We could bringing your awareness to here and now with kindness and curiosity. And by doing that, you are able to choose your response or your behavior. So what you've read, Cliff, I think what that means, mindfulness is also a way to just become aware of what you're feeling right now. So even if you're feeling unhappy or sad because of circumstances or whatever is happening in your life, you are just making a note of that feeling and that what's happening in your body as a result of that feeling, what kind of thoughts are you having. So it is actually paying attention to, when we say here and now, it's paying attention to different things, to the the things around me in the physical outer world, and also special effort is made to pay attention to my inner world. So I'm being aware of my thoughts, my feelings, the physical sensations in my body, the five senses we have and what's happening, with those senses. If I'm eating, I'm focusing on the taste sense. If I'm listening to a talk or a podcast, I'm paying, specific attention using my hearing sense. So it's, your first step is you're just paying attention with kindness and curiosity as what's going on. And you're not really fighting it, you're not trying to find a solution, but you're just taking it as is without any judgment and being maybe a little bit curious. And then when you do that, you're able to actually look at the whole big picture and look at the different options of how to deal with this, what to do about it, and then you can choose the response. And I'll explain this further as we go. But I think, I think, Cliff, what you read was like, you're not fighting that unhappy feeling. You're simply noticing and being curious about where is that coming from? What's happening? How can I deal with it? Like that's where it starts. Often what happens is, when we are dealing with any difficult emotions, just, response is always to fix it or to find a way to get rid of it or change it. And often that's a reactive response, and often that does not work. So by being mindful, we are able to actually open up different options and pick a wiser option to solve our problem is what we understand. So let's, move along, and I'll explain this a little bit more to you guys. So here is a great example of, I guess, me, and this was a few years ago until I started understanding what mindfulness is and started to bring it in my life. So it's me and my daughter going to the park. My intention is to actually spend my one-on-one time with my daughter. I want to see her play on the play structure. I want her to, get my attention. I want to see how she's like having fun. So that's what I really want. I want to be in that moment of watching her ride on the slide and come down, or, play with other kids and take turns, whatnot. But, because of the busy modern life I am in, I am usually, even though I want to be in that moment for her and I'm trying to do that, there are things that's making my mind full of to-do lists and things I have to do, because that's kind of what my life demands from me right now. So what's happened to us is that our minds are definitely full, but they are full of either things we have to do, things that have happened, things that have gone throughout the day that I haven't had time to look into or process. There's so much. And, when I'm with my daughter, I'm mostly like, okay, I would take that opportunity, even though my intention used to be I should be there, see and watch her and be fully there for her. I used to actually take that time to, okay, let me return some of my messages that I needed to while she's playing. So I'm going to just walk around the play structure, pretend as if I'm with her, but I'm going to keep doing my phone calls, my return my messages, reply to some of my emails, and of course we have smartphones, so we can do all of those things right at the click of our small device. So that's not what mindfulness is. If my task was to be with my daughter and be with her, I want to not become mindful, use mindfulness this way, that's my time. I drop everything, even though I have lots of things telling me, yelling, screaming at me, saying, hey, when are you going to do this? When are you going to do that? Even though I take her for 5 to 10 minutes of play, I want to be fully there and enjoy every moment. And that's what mindfulness is. So what's happened to us is that, we are doing multitasking, which we are not supposed to. That's not how our brain works. We know that, doing too many things, even though we feel like we are capable, like I can listen and I can talk at the same time, and I can use my hands to do something else, and I can still like cook and talk and finish my work call. We've been able to, of course, do that. But what we are knowing from research studies is that that's what is stress. Like a lot of times people won't say that they have anything necessarily stressful going on in their lives. There's no adversity, no problems otherwise. But we are seeing consequence of stress in the form of higher mental health issues, higher physical health issues. And those people are like, I don't know, I'm not leading a stressful life. But what we have done to adapt to the requirements and the demands of our lives is to multitask, to not do one thing fully with the presence, but we keep going from one thing to another and try to kind of check box, you check the boxes on the list. Okay, I need to do this. I'm going to pretend as if I'm doing this, but I'm also doing that. So that's what is a problem. That's where mindfulness comes in. So another way to understand mindfulness is, again, what are we doing? We are doing, this making a conscious effort to bring our awareness to here and now, where we are in that present moment, and whatever that might be, whether that's, listening to somebody, a friend talking and asking you for any advice, so mindful listening, whether it is talking, I'm making sure I'm choosing the right words and saying it in a way, in a tone, in a way that is making sense. Mindful eating, and I'm eating, I'm using all my 5 senses to enjoy my food. Mindful dancing, mindful stretching, or mindful yoga practice, mindful running, mindful dancing, you name it. Essentially, whatever I'm doing, I am being with that, and I'm not getting pulled by other thoughts and other to-do lists in my brain, in my mind. So we are paying attention to our breath, our sensations, thoughts, feelings, events, and our impulses and action. And how do we do that? By being compassionate to self and others. So being really compassionate to self, not judging yourself for making mistakes, or judging others for others being, not correct, or blaming them for their mistakes and their choices, which is why you behave this way. And why do we have to do that? Because we need to have the necessary information to respond wisely and kindly to self and others. Because we know that if we don't take these steps before, we are going to make a choice of response that's more of reactive, that's not going to make us feel good about how we responded later on. And who is the one that's paying attention? It's my awareness. And some of you have been attending some of the meditations I've been doing. We go to our place of stillness and quietness. So we do that by using our breath as an anchor to slowly rest in our stillness and quietness. And then we say, okay, let's see what's going on in the outer world and in my inner world. So why is this so important? I think research studies have shown a number of benefits. I've listed only a few up here. That mindfulness helps with improving patience. So, in our lightning fast, instant gratification world we are in, it's very easy to get distracted, but mindfulness teaches us to practice practice patience. And the more we practice, then it comes naturally to us when we need it. It's also known to improve productivity and focus because you're not wasting your energy trying to multitask and putting your attention in 10 different things. You are just doing one thing at a time. So it's really building your awareness about what's distracting, what are my impulses, what do I need to focus on, and I can improve my productivity because my energy and efficiency levels improve. It certainly has known to also improve compassion because the whole focus is to be non-judgmental. So you are trying to take away any kinds of judgment about yourself or others and bringing it back to what's happening here and now. It's giving you awareness to be more aware of what's happening in your body. Like a lot of the times we don't even know what's happening unless we make an effort to sit quietly. And then I'm like, oh, I'm feeling some tingle here, or I'm feeling this queasy feeling in my tummy or whatnot. So it gives you an opportunity to be more with your body. Also, of course, it's shown to be effective for reducing stress and anxiety. There's been studies of mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapy for anxiety, depression that has shown to be very effective. It's improved attention and focus, concentration, and productivity for kids who have ADHD or other kinds of issues like that. So it's a very well-known fact that it's a very beneficial thing. And it's, to me, I think I look at it as a lifestyle change. It's just like we've made effort to bring a lifestyle change in what we eat, limit carbs, have more proteins, less of fat, whatever. This is like a lifestyle change. I'm going to constantly make an effort in everything I do to do it mindfully. So I'm looking at the clock. I think we are getting closer to the time. I want to maybe take a pause here and open it up for a couple questions before we end for today.
That sounds good idea, Dr. Leo. I do see Damodran has a question. Damodran, go ahead.
I try to understand when you say be gracious to yourself or be having some gratitude to yourself, not judgmental. Like I want to give you an example that when working remotely from home, while I'm doing something, try to troubleshoot something, there's many chances that I got distracted either by my checks from my colleagues that asking for something, chat from manager, or somebody asking for something, and that can count almost the same time. And then somebody knocking at my door, my son is asking me where he can find his stuff. So that kind of situation always raise my anxiety and stress. And I feel distressful, and I try to fight it, and I try to get rid of it. So when you say judgment, don't be judgmental or be gracious to yourself, how do I apply that in that situation?
Good question, Cliff. Thank you for asking that question. So you're right. I mean, I think that's what I was saying, that the lifestyle we are in right now is become like that, where we are pulled in different directions, and you're expected to respond in few seconds or minutes if somebody is texting you, especially if it's a work-related situation, all the more. And then you of course have your family, and so there is people from all directions that are trying to pull you. So I have a couple thoughts about how you could practice mindfulness there, and what I mean by being kind and curious and non-judgmental, and being compassionate to yourself. So one thing, I mean, you could do, and I think it's about working on resetting expectations from self and making others also aware that they need to also reframe or kind of modify their expectations. So I have done that. Like when I am doing something, and if my daughter is trying to grab my attention, unless it's something very important, I have notified her or my husband, whoever, I think in my family, at least I can certainly start there and say that, when I'm doing something, unless it's necessary for you to interrupt me, I would like you to wait till I finish my XYZ thing. And I think even so, let's assume that there's something important that cannot wait, and they need to come in and grab your attention. So what generally tends to happen, and I'm kind of visualizing your situation that you described, where you're like, I'm feeling this pressure to respond to the text of my manager, some colleague is asking me something, and I need to fix something and troubleshoot, help somebody troubleshoot. And here is my fourth thing is like my son, and I'm trying to navigate through all of this. So the idea is, what happens is you're feeling this pressure, and there is a high level of like stress, feeling the stress and anxiety like you described, that's happening in your body. But if I'm not in tune with when that's building, usually what happens is I'm not even aware of that slowly building. Now this got added and that got added and that got pulling me. So I lose that ability to regulate myself or my emotions. And what happens is maybe my daughter or my son would come and say, excuse me, where is that I really need now? You may lash out at them because now you felt like that was that last straw on the camel's back, because you were saying, and then you feel like it was justified, like I had 4 people asking every piece of me, how can I respond to everyone? So where does the mindfulness come here is that I think we need to even if your text is beeping and you're expected to respond in the next 30 seconds, but you're right now with a client trying to troubleshoot their problem, you can I guess that's if you are being in that moment and you're like, I need to work with this client and solve this thing first, and then I'm going to the next thing. If you reframe your own expectations and not kind of feel that sense of urgency to like I have to do this and this all simultaneously, and know is that when I'm trying to also like I respond to my text while I'm talking to somebody here, while I'm actually taking much more time to finish all of those tasks. But if I am, noticing that a lot of things are being thrown at me, I'm starting my day with like a, clean slate and feeling calm. And I'm going to make a conscious effort to be, you know, in one moment and one task at a time. So I'm going to quickly maybe type up a short message. Uh, Let me respond back to you in 5 minutes and put that to rest, and bring myself back to this first priority of troubleshooting, which I was trying to do. And when I say being compassionate, you're being compassionate to yourself, that you are, going to do one thing at a time, do it properly and successfully, and then move to the next thing. So you're not holding yourself, you're not judging yourself for not meeting expectations from all 4 people that were asking something from you. That's where being compassionate to yourself comes in. You're being kind to yourself and compassionate to yourself and telling yourself, I am going to tell this person to wait. Just like, when we call somebody, routinely happens where when you call for doctor's appointments or other appointments, some people will say, I have 4 callers ahead of you. I have 3 callers ahead of you. Would you mind waiting, please? What are they trying to do? They are doing essentially some form of mindfulness in a way. They can't be physically present and answer all the 4 people, but they give you a little attention and give you a little pause time to say, okay, I'm there for you. I'm listening. I'll come back to you. But right now, let me do this one thing. Because if I'm not getting pulled, I'm not having hundreds of thoughts like, I have to respond to them. Oh, now this guy is asking what I do. I need to respond to that email. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. If I'm not, so if I am actually able to stay calm, be aware of what's happening, externally, internally, and not get judgmental, become more curious about and kind about, like, okay, what's going on here? Okay, today is one of those days when I'm facing all these challenges. I'm going to quickly respond and tell others to wait, or not respond if that doesn't happen. And then when I come to them, I'm going to apologize and say, hey, I'm sorry for the delay. I was doing XYZ. That's why I didn't respond. So I think, that's where the compassion comes. When you bring that compassion to yourself and express it, compassionately to other person, they will take that into account as well. But what happens to us is that we hold ourselves accountable for doing everything perfectly, and we are trying to meet that, this. I mean, unfortunately, I think maybe it's even a more of a Silicon Valley culture where we've all put ourselves into this box of, like, the moment this text comes, the moment this email comes from my boss or my manager, I need to respond immediately. I mean, it doesn't need to be immediately. It can be in the next 1 hour, next few hours. Maybe you can acknowledge the receipt of this task and you can tell them when you will get to it. But it doesn't mean that you are going to, like, stress yourself out and try to finish that so you continue to be in their good books. I mean, how long can you sustain that? And I think that's what we've gotten ourselves, and we've set such high bars for ourselves in our day-to-day life that we are constantly chasing those, and we've lost perspective of what I'm capable of doing, in a sound manner, in a healthy way. And if I can do that, and if I can, stop being judgmental about myself and worry about that approach is going to not work good, I can actually make a lot of progress. You will realize, I mean, I have seen a difference in my efficiency and productivity when I meditate and I take a moment to be mindful versus when I'm just all over the place. So I would invite you to try it and tell me if it works or what challenges you come across, and we'll continue to troubleshoot. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Dr. Yeah.
Poonam, you had any additional thoughts you wanted to add quickly before we?
Yeah, no, you said it very nicely. So there are even time management skills and digital detoxing, and having those, moments where you can say do not disturb on your chat, or you do decide time windows. At this time only I will check my emails. And I highly recommend to experiment tomorrow. And the thing, like the context switching, we are not supposed to be multitasking, and we are. And I have seen myself, when I do that, I tend to do more mistakes. So we expect our kids to remain focused, be productive, get good grades, and what are we doing? So how do we remain focused, right? So how do we increase that power of concentration? So meditation is one way, and other way, what Dr. Leena explained, kind and compassionate. I definitely have lowered expectation from myself, and I love myself the way I'm managing things, so I don't need to be perfect. I'm perfectly imperfect. That's what I tell myself. It's okay. It's not end of the world if I'm not responding immediately. And I have experimented. It's really people, like when you say, I'm sorry, I was busy doing this, so they understand. So my also request is to try it out tomorrow. Dr. Leena is with us for remaining 3 days. You can share your findings, your outcomes of experimentation. So that will be great for all of us. So we do have one more question. Damodran, please go ahead.
Hi, and thank you so much for the session. Has been fantastic so far. I have a question about. I'm actually wondering how mindfulness fits to a larger audience as compared to a specific audience where it is really required, right? The reason why I'm asking is I did experience, gone through some of these and even burnt a little bit. And the point is, what I'm conveying is, since we all have grown up, we have developed habits, we learned many things, we programmed ourselves, and most of the responses that we do that comes from us is mostly involuntary, and then by leveraging the subconscious mind. So now this is all going good. Let's not take some of the exceptions, the bad examples, but taking the average. When these things are going good, now you introduce something called mindfulness and make us process each of the input, and it gets an overhead for you, and it creates a drastic change in your behavior. I feel for some reasons that I have become slow due to this. It's an overhead. If you're in this industry, network industry, you will know that this is like more like a packet overhead compared to what you're actually have been executing so far in your life. So this is how I wanted to compare and contrast. That's why I'm feeling mindfulness can be really helpful for somebody who is in a severe problem. But for somebody who is already going good, why you want to introduce the overhead? How does it help? That's what my question is.
Okay, thank you, Damodaran. So let me try to answer this to the best of my ability. I think we have to look at two things here. So one is when you are saying that we are very much programmed in behaving certain ways, right? Like I think that's something you said, and often when we meditate, we are trying to reprogram ourselves, is what one way of thinking about bringing the change is. But if you're saying that if certain patterns of your personality, your responses are working in your favor, why change that, right? So the question I have for you is that in the short term right now, when you're healthy and young and assuming you're taking good care of yourself, you're feeling like these things are working for me, so I'm going to not change that because it's been going well, and why bother, kind of a thing, right? But what we are understanding is that that's how you maybe feel when you are younger, and your resilience and general overall capacity, your physical and emotional capacity to do things is generally like good because of being young and healthy. But long-term sustenance of that level of stress and kind of working in those ways has not been shown to be helpful for our well-being longer term. And so why are we like, there are so many healthy people who are like very healthy about their lifestyles, but they still have heart disease. Why we are having so many young people who are coming out with cancer? And I'm not saying because of mindfulness is the only problem, that's what's bringing them to that. Don't get me wrong, there are multiple changes, multiple factors that we don't even know which ones are there. But what I'm saying is that often I'll talk about my own personal journey in this. So most people in medical field and engineers to larger extent are known to be perfectionist. That's a personality trait that really comes in very handy to all of us, because that's what we get appreciated for. Like, I can be very precise, I can get 99.9% marks, so I can get into med school or engineering school. So that's that's my strength. And I think what you're saying is, I was always thinking that was my strength all along, until I got hit with a health problem at a very young age. I was barely 35, and I got hit by a health problem, unknowingly. I was blindsided by that, because I was leading a healthy life. As a doctor, I know what's good for me. I was doing everything, and what I learned from that setback, which gave me time to pause, is to reflect. Whatever I was thinking was the right way to live, I realized that level of perfection in my day-to-day life when I was in training, working for 80, 90 hours, was actually a disaster for me. Even though I was stretching myself and getting everything done and getting kudos every day by my bosses and doing everything, and then coming home and playing my part as a mom, as a wife and doing everything perfectly, in the house. Even though I wasn't feeling it, in day-to-day life, on the subconscious level or under the surface, it was harming me. It was taking away my ability to fight infections, and my immunity was compromised. And I got hit with a very bad infection that took 2 years for me to go on antibiotics to clear that infection. So that was my time to look back and say, hold on, like, what's going on here? What did I do wrong in all of this? Like, I think my perfection had always paid off so far. I think my, ability to do things correctly and point out others when they were doing something wrong or get angry or upset quickly was my strength, because people would, respect me for my knowledge or my ability to call them out or whatever. I was, maybe whatever things were wrongly reinforced, I kept thinking those were my strengths, but looking back, I felt like, oh, those were my weak spots that actually brought me where I am, and they were subtly affecting my immune system, which led to this level of medical kind of problem. And that was my turning point. I realized that I need to let go and modify and reprogram some of my thinking patterns and some of my distorted thinking patterns and my expectations from myself and my way of looking at things and viewing, being judgmental, essentially viewing, if this is how I do, that's good. If I do this, this is bad. So that whole change happened to me in the 2 years, where I brought a big shift in self-care and self-management, which is what I think has helped me to become even a better doctor, a better person overall. And I feel like that setback, even though it was a hard one at that time for me to go through the medical treatment and stuff, that those 2 years were actually, I look back, those were valuable lessons I learned in my life. So to your question, I guess I want to say is that, in to make it long story short, is that often we don't even know what are the problems with these things that working for me, but there might be definitely problems, is what we are learning. Either it may present itself to you in front of in form of a health problem, and that's when you will be jolted, or it might be something you may get by and nothing will happen. Maybe I am not saying that won't happen, but we are learning more and more from research that things that we don't obviously perceive as stress are stressful for us, because we are not meant to be certain ways.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Can I add one on top of it? Just one more question. One last.
Sure.
Yeah. Can you give me a little bit more subtle difference between how I respond in traditionally versus in a mindful way? Because whenever you're adopting a practice of mindfulness, you really go through a small cycle.
Yeah.
Is this the way I respond? Is this essential? A few things, right? Few kind of a questionnaire, right?
Yeah.
All this kind of processing almost flushes away the way that you respond itself. Basically, you kind of forgot how you really responded in the past. It kind of resets the system.
Yeah.
But that is a drastic change in the behavior, in the psychology of a human being. It's a drastic change. You're basically kind of unsetting. I mean, basically resetting whatever your past 30, 35 years. But that's the drastic. So is it like, can't we
think
take
it's
it like a pinch of
necessary
salt?
No, it's not necessarily meant to change you 360-degree like that. So let me give you an example. So if I was doing this presentation live, and just for example, let's say you were sitting in the audience, and you were either like looking disinterested, or you were putting your head down and you were just like not listening to me, or you were turning your back, or maybe you were making funny faces, whatever. Let's like go to the extreme, and I am the person looking at this. And so if if I am not mindful in that moment, I might be, looking at this somebody being disrespectful, making fun of me, teasing me, whatever, and so I can react by saying, I am feeling being disrespected right now by X, Y, and Z. I'm no longer doing this presentation. Thank you for having me. I'm not coming back ever again. I'm just going to the extreme, okay, for example. But when I'm taking in mindfulness into perspective, what I'm trying now to do is I'm looking at the full big picture. So I'm looking at, okay, I have 10 audiences, of which about 8 seem to be interested in what I'm saying, and they seem to be listening and showing some respect that way. And 2 people, of which this one person seems to be much more extreme, the other person is kind of in and out. Okay, so I have 2 out of 10 people who are not truly, looking interested in my presentation. That's one point I'm trying to. So what mindfulness allows me to do is I'm taking a pause and I'm looking at the full big picture rather than focusing on that one person that's telling me, that you're not doing a good job, for instance. So then I'm being kind and curious. So what's happening with these 2 people that are behaving this way? Oh, let me become kind and curious about what could it be. One could be, oh, that person seems distracted on their phone. Maybe they are getting some important messages that they need to respond, and that's why they are in and out and not really paying attention to what I'm saying. And this other person who seems to be like, turning their back or, not listening to me or trying to like just look tired or whatever. Oh, maybe they didn't sleep well the night before. Maybe, they are having a bad day. Maybe they came with different set of expectations as to what they would be learning today, and they are completely, disappointed to hear what I am saying instead. Whatever. So I am extending my kindness and curiosity about why this is happening the way it is happening, rather than assuming that this person is out there to disrespect me and therefore I need to react and say goodbye. So when I bring in that kindness and curiosity, being in that present moment, I expand my vision to what's really happening here, paying attention to my thoughts, my feelings, other person's, situation, then I can, bring in all that into account, and I could be like, that's okay. Other 8 people seem to be interesting. I can ignore these 2 people and I can still go about presenting. I can choose to maybe at the end of the presentation have a one-on-one chat with this person and ask, everything going okay? Did you feel disappointed? Did you come with different expectations? So that's my response. I'm not going automatic, this person is respecting, I'm this prestigious speaker that was invited, and look at this person is not even valuing me, so I'm going to walk away with a bang. That's a reaction. But if I'm taking, it's almost like that Poonam was saying, that automatic response that we create in our email, whether or not, whatever my question is, your auto response is the same. Like, I'm not in office right now, from so and so date, please contact me later. So what I'm trying to say is that when we say mindfulness, we are not trying to fundamentally change your personality. I don't know, maybe you have different understanding about it. It does not mean to slow down, that to become like a slow person in your response. It's just using your emotional intelligence more widely, being kind, being empathic, being, non-judgmental of it's all good or bad, it's black and white, there's a gray zone here. There might be some things that could be why this person is doing this to me. So let me give them the benefit of doubt rather than assuming what I'm thinking is right and react and then find out, oh, there was a different reason. So mindfulness allows me to give that space. The Viktor Frankl's, saying is really very good way to understand mindfulness. He says between the stimulus and response, there is a space. And that space is what we can call as mindfulness. If I apply if somebody is hitting me with a hammer, instead of breaking apart, can I actually, I guess, that may not be the perfect example, but that space between the stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space I have a choice. If I use that space, that's what with mindfulness, it allows me to give the different choices I have to respond to this particular situation. And mindfulness allows me to do that. So it's just I don't think it's a way to like dampen your personality or make you feel like this person, you can walk away over, whatever they do, because it's just become this really simple, benign guy. That's not the understanding. The understanding is you're actually becoming more emotionally intelligent and being aware of what's happening for me. What's going on here? Let's be kind and curious. Let me not judge myself or others. Let me see how I can bring in this whole perspective before I choose the response to deal with the situation.
Yeah,
Dr.
sure.
Leena,
Thank you so much.
I could add few things. I think I can relate with what Damodaran is saying. So once upon a time, I used to be very ambitious. People used to call me, she's so aggressive. And then I started doing meditation practice. There was definitely change in my behavior, my priorities, and people were kind of surprised what happened to her. She's not the same Poonam as before. But I'm proud. Like, I felt I learned the art of living by taking pause, making choices. I was running that rat race which everybody was running, and life even changed my perspective, my priorities, which I will definitely share in our few upcoming sessions. But I am like saying I made that choice. Yes, people can label me, she has slowed down in her career, promotion doesn't excite her anymore, or earning is not her priority. But I don't think it is a slowdown in my life. In the sense, I'm rather enjoying. I am having those pauses. I am like, I can smell roses. I can enjoy that sunny day, go for a walk. I made that decision. So I don't know, Damodaran, you can maybe share more in upcoming sessions. Because I feel it is good. It is the right way. This human being, we are the human beings, not human doings. We are not machines. Yes, we have adopted that lifestyle of working nonstop like machines, but we have forgotten that experience, that beauty of life. So if mindfulness is reminding us to enjoy life, relationship, your work, so what is wrong in that? I feel like, half of the people may do mindfully, half may not, and you may feel, am I doing something wrong? But you need to ask your own self, what is the purpose of your life? What do you want? What is important to you at this moment in your life? Let others do whatever they want to do. And it's not a rat race, or I don't need to copy others. I don't need to run. If I don't have capacity to run, I can walk. It's absolutely fine. So we all need to ask these questions in our life journey. Then only we will realize, my journey is different from others' journey. Other priorities could be different. I am choosing what is important to me, and I feel good about it. So that's what I did in my life, and I definitely can share more in upcoming sessions.
Sure, great. Thank you, Poonam.
Yeah, thank you, Poonam. And I think, it is just to reiterate the point, I think is, they say in Hindi, हमें लंबे रेस का घोड़ा बनना है. So if you want to, have a kind of, again, it's a choice for what you are looking for, but a more healthy long-term living is what when we all desire ultimately. I mean, we want to be successful in our prime years of working and whatnot, but we don't want to pay a cost for that and have a long-term like non-healthy. So if we use up all our fuel in the first 30 miles of driving the car fast and we lose all our, ability and resources, then, how are we going to sustain later on? And I think that's kind of one way to think about this, that if we can't sustain that human doing kind of lifestyle forever. At one point our body's going to give, or something's got to give, and we have to think about, okay, how I can make this sustainable so I'm having kind of fun and happiness throughout this whole journey, than trying to get to one destination and getting exhausted and not be able to, have the future journey, being enjoyable. Anyway, so, again, there can be many different perspectives. So, certainly we'll explore this more and continue to answer your questions and share our perspectives. And then we can see, what others also think about it, and we can learn from each other. Okay, thank you.